So, Dark Samus 3. If you're watching this video, there's a decent chance you already understand the basics of how this fight works, but I'm going to be going over the fundamentals of everything for Dark Samus 3 so that we're on the same page by the time that we get to setups and positions and all that stuff. So, the way that this fight starts out is that Dark Samus will start moving in a random direction in the arena. And she will do that for a little bit until she stops and starts doing a phase on beam attack. And during this period of time where she's moving around before the phase on beam attack, you can do damage to her, and she won't do anything about it. She'll just keep hovering until she stops. So we want to maximize the amount of damage that we can do here, um, and not go over her threshold. So she has this threshold where if you do more than 303 damage, or it's either 303 or more, then she will automatically transition to Dark Samus 4. So we want to do as much damage without hitting that threshold. And that's kind of hard to do without Annihilator Beam, but with Annihilator Beam, if you shoot 26 shots, that'll go over, and 25 shots will be exactly what you need. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to use Annihilator Beam, and I'm going to shoot 25 shots. So this is the max amount of damage that you can do before she goes into the phase on beam attack. And now this is the next part where she does her phase on beam attack. And it's very important to note, I'm going to pause here. It's very important to note that during the phase on beam attack, she will charge up like this, and then she will start facing you. Like she'll face your exact position. That's going to be important to note for later so that we understand what's happening. And then after she faces you, she will do either 2 or 3 beams, and she'll only do 2 or 3. And while she's doing each beam attack, so during 1, 2, and if she does a third one, she will move away from you. So she'll face you, do a beam attack, and then move away from you for each beam attack. So the distance between you and her will change a little bit, and that's just random. That won't end up mattering a whole lot, but it's important to understand that's how that works for later. So let me show you this. Doing her phase on beam attack now. And so this is the part where after the second beam, you want to move close to her and then start setting up for a screw attack. Because a screw attack does damage Dark Samus when she's vulnerable, and it does 36 damage per frame. It's the most amount of damage we can do to Dark Samus, period. So we want to, this is what we want to use. So you want to get close to her and set up your screw attack. And I'll explain how to optimize your screw attack later, but we're going over the fundamentals of how to do the fight. So now we've done a bunch of damage to Dark Samus 3, and she's well over the threshold. But if you go over the threshold after the phase on beam attack, she goes into this weird state where she will only go transition into Dark Samus 4 after she queues up a center action. And she has a bunch of different actions that she can queue up, a bunch of different directions she can move in. She can queue up a forward dash or a side dash. I'm not sure exactly how many different actions there are, but there's a bunch of them. And she can queue any of them up. But if she queues up a center state, then she'll immediately transition to Dark Samus 4. So after she goes into the state, what you want to do is shoot a missile. And that's because when she's in this state, if she's in a neutral state, meaning she hasn't queued up any actions, she will put up her shield, which is exactly what we want because it will force her to be stationary, right? So you can see she's putting up her shield here, and she's stationary. And she doesn't have anything queued up, which is why she keeps putting up her shield like this. And then she did queue up a backwards dash, which is why I couldn't stop her with the shield. So the way the fight normally works is you want to move close to her, like I just did, shoot a missile so that she brings up her shield, which will make you invulnerable for a little bit. Like, I'm not sure, it's like 3/4 of a second or something. But it allows you to get close to her and do a screw attack. Because if you don't shoot the missile and take damage, you'll just get pushed away during your screw attack. So you need these invincibility frames to get close to her and do another screw attack. And then if you do enough damage, then you can kill her in 2 screw attacks. So that's how the fight, the fundamentals of the fight go. Understanding this like Q is kind of you don't need to understand it, but it helps for understanding like what's happening in the fight and what's screwing you over. So with that out of the way, what we want to do in this fight to avoid a center is to minimize the amount of opportunities that Dark Samus has to queue up a center, right? Because she'll only transition when she queues it up. So the less amount of time she spends in this Dark Samus 3 state where she can queue up any action, the more likely you are to get centered at all. Okay, so understanding how we minimize RNG, the best thing we can do to accomplish that is making sure that she is close to us after our first screw attack. And I have a save state for this. So if you just do the fight normally, she will dash somewhere in the room and you'll have to find her, right? And she'll put up your shield and you want to get close to her and then try to kill it, right? So we can make the fight much more consistent if, in an ideal world, we shoot our first missile so she puts up her first shield, and then we only make her put up one more shield. Because that minimizes the amount of times that we need to keep her stationary, which gives her less opportunities to queue up a Dark Samus 4 state. So if I do this optimally, I would get close enough to her and then make her put up her shield. And then I would kill her in one more screw attack and then end the fight. Because if it takes more than 2 screw attacks, you are giving her more opportunities to queue up a center action. So with all of that out of the way, let's go into finally explaining how the setups work. Okay, so now we can explain how the position setups work to begin with. So when you start the fight, like I said, Dark Samus will move in a random direction, but it's actually only 5 different random directions that she can move in. And when you do the fight normally, you start moving towards her, kind of like this, and doing damage or whatever. She will kind of hover around and face you, and so it changes her position because she will move relative to where you are. But if you start the fight by not moving at all, then your relative position to her will always be the same. So she will always end up in one of 5 different spots and only 5 different spots. And understanding that, I can actually show you this image I made demonstrating this, right? So you can see in this green text, we have Dark Samus's positions. So we call this position 1 through 5 from left to right. You can see Samus's starting positions down here at the bottom. And so if you stand still, she will end up in either position 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 always. And now this allows us to make adjustment setups for each position because, like I said, she will always face you when she starts doing her phase on beam attack, right? And then she will start doing her phase on beam attack, and she will either do 2 or 3 phase on beam attacks, which will change her position slightly, but it doesn't end up mattering for our adjustments very much. And so if you use these adjustments relative to her position, that means that she will always end up in a very similar position after you do your first screw attack. A very predictable position that is ideal for getting a 2 screw attack and minimizing the amount of times we have to put up her shield. So that is how we're minimizing RNG by using these setups, right? So the orange, what that means, these orange dots, these are Samus's positions. So if you get position 2, you will go to this orange dot, and then the left to the orange dot means you will do a screw attack to the left of Samus. And I will demonstrate all 5 different screw attacks and the details for them. But this is what you need to understand if you're referencing this image. And all of this and more images will be, I'll link them back in the description. Okay, now we can finally get into explaining the setups and positions and how the fight actually is executed. So if you have Annihilator Beam here, the start of the fight's not gonna change much. You're just gonna stand still and shoot 25 shots, and that's it. If you don't have Annihilator Beam, like under any percent conditions, you will shoot 2 missiles, a super missile, and then switch to Dark Beam. And you don't need to have Dark Beam, but it's helpful if you don't kill her in 2 screw attacks and she has a sliver of health. you can finish her off with Dark Beam instead of doing another screw attack, which is nice. And having Dark Beam equipped doesn't hinder us in any way. So let me show you what that looks like. So target, 2 missiles, super missile, switch to Dark Beam. And then I like to use the Dark Beam as a visual cue here. As the Dark Beam starts to transform and you can see it starts to move upwards like that, that means you're perfectly safe to start moving because Dark Samus has already settled on her position. And so you can start moving into position for the setup. And with that out of the way, I'm going to start explaining all the adjustments from 1 to 5. But for the first one, I'm also going to try to explain how to get a good screw attack for the first screw attack. Because it's really important to get it, like, juice your first screw attack as much as you can to get a 2 screw attack. And like I said, you really do want a 2 screw attack to not get centered in this fight. So let's start explaining that. So for position 1, you start moving behind her. And then I use this visual cue on screen. I'll show you an image. Where I kind of line up in between her legs and then go to this line. And that's where I stand. And then you start targeting Dark Samus until she starts shooting the first shot, like this. And then you let go of L until you go back to neutral. I'll make a safe stay here. And now this is where she can either do 2 phase-on shots or 3. No matter what, you want to start moving towards her and lining yourself up on the second shot, because that's when she can come back down. And if she does a third shot, just move forward again to align yourself, because she's going to move backwards again. My visual cue is I like to use the phase-on that's coming from the lower. You see this phase-on that's just like dripping down. After the second shot right here, I start moving forward until I'm about a Samus distance away from her. You can see when she falls down, I'm about a Samus distance away from her. So second shot, start moving forward into position. And then as soon as the phase-on disappears, that means she's going to fall down. So you will move either left or right, depending on what the adjustment calls for. For position 1, it's going to be left. And you want to move left or right, just far enough so that you won't bonk on Dark Samus when you do your screw attack. And this is just going to take practice. You'll feel it out. If you've already done this before, then you know what I mean. So it's going to look like, getting in position is going to be look like this. After the second beam, you move forward. She's coming down, you move left like that. And for the actual screw attack, the way I like to time it is I like to do 2 quick jumps like this. See my input display and how quickly I'm jumping. But during my second jump, that's when I like to start holding like slight forward, a soft input forward. And then immediately after I start doing a soft input forward, I'll do a screw attack. And it also helps to release slight forward about halfway to 3/4 of the way through your screw attack, because it'll reduce the amount of distance you move forward. So jump, space jump, soft input, start your screw attack, and then let go about halfway to 3/4 of the way through. Like that. So the fight will look like this. And then after you're about to come back in the first person, that's when you want to start spamming your missile to lock Dark Samus in place. And, oh my god, I shot the, so that's why you don't want to shoot early. That's actually a good example. I shot a screw attack missile, which is a frame perfect input, and you'll shoot your missile straight down, which is horrible. You don't want to do that. So you want to shoot it later. But since I'm pausing, it's a little bit more difficult. So let me show that again. And for position 1, she should always end up back and to the right of you, which means you start moving forward or to the right and spamming a missile while equipping Dark Visor. Should be close to you, and you can get close to her, shoot 1 missile to get her shield up for the second shield, and finish her off with a screw attack. And that's how you do position 1. I forgot to mention this at the time, but you know your screw attack is good if the health bar ends somewhere between halfway of the K in Dark or at the end of the A. That's kind of what you're aiming for. Now for position 2, it's going to be very similar, but with a different visual cue. We're going to get behind her, and then we're going to look at this visual cue right here. It's like on the circle. You just stand here. Target her, same as before. Let go after the first phase on. Now this is the exact same as before. Move forward in the second one. Use the phase on as reference. This is going to be a 3 beam. Move forward again. Left. And then for this one, it's actually very similar as 1. She's going to be back and to the right of you. Maybe slightly more back on average. So you turn to the right and spam your missile. That's position 2. So this is going to be position 3. This is my least favorite position. The distance that she will end up after the screw attack is slightly further away than all the other adjustments, and but this is the best I've come up with. It's still possible just to do a single shield, or 2 shields in total, and then 2 screw attacks. You can still do a perfectly good fight, but it's just slightly harder, and that's why I don't like this one. But let me show you what this looks like. So I line up with this right here on like the cross. Same thing as before, you target her. Let go. Move forward on the second beam. It's doing 3 here. Readjust. And then for this one, you're going to turn left and shoot a missile, because she's going to be back into the left of you. Now this is position 4. Now what I like to line up with is, you can see there's these 2 dots that are close to each other. I like to find these and then position myself on the front dot. And this is going to be a screw attack to the right. And now for position 4, she's going to end up back into the left of you. So turn left and shoot a missile. So this is position 5. And position 5 is unique in the fact that after you do your first screw attack, she can actually go left and behind you or right and behind you. Now both of those are actually in really good positions. So this is still one of my favorite positions. But you have to keep that in mind, and you have to listen with your headphones. If she goes left, then you turn left and shoot a missile. If she goes right, then you turn right and shoot a missile. Now, my lineup for this is very similar to position 4. You find the same texture where there's those 2 dots close to each other, and then you stand on the front one. And that's all there is to the setups. I know this is a long video, but I wanted to go into great detail into explaining exactly how everything works, so you just have a better idea of what's going on. It is worth noting that, of course, you can still get centered. I call it true centering when she queues up a center action immediately after the first screw attack. And there's nothing you can do about that. But honestly, it's really rare to get that. You can get false centered, which is if you've missed killing her on the second screw attack, or if you let her do too many things before you start screw attacking her shield, you can get centered. But I think that's, when people say they get centered, I think like 90+% of the time they're getting false centered and not true centered. So it's important to execute this fight as well as you can to minimize RNG. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope this helps.